Good to go.
Hello and welcome to Radhika Gupta, a really special person. I admire her spirit, I admire her intelligence, her innovation, her ability to take risks, and her ability to work across cultures and continents. It's quite amazing. She's all of these wrapped in this little package. She's quite a wonderful woman. Radhika Gupta, hello and welcome to this special talk. I really wanted to ask you about, we know you, of course, and you always laughingly describe yourself as the girl with the broken neck. But you've made it so much part of your identity. And yet, that's not actually the first thing people notice about you, you know? That's the last thing that occurs to them because your personality is so much more than that. But it must have taken, obviously, a lot of work on yourself, on your personality to come to that point where this was the least of your problem.
Thanks, Kaveri. I think that's an interesting question. And, I was just thinking about this because we were talking before the show also. I think, when I grew up, at least, if I look at my childhood pictures and lockdown kind of gives you time to do that, I think there was a lot of inherent confidence in my childhood pictures, right? When I was 4 and 5. I mean, my mother used to say it looks like a junior IAS officer is out on inspection, and my father is in the IFS, so it made it. So that was the kind of confidence, innate confidence in my eyes, like it was scary. And then I think as you grow up, and I really believe teenage years are quite difficult for women, especially, and all of us grapple with sort of our own things and issues about our looks, and it could be someone's necks and someone's weight and someone's social status. I mean, I discovered, by the way, in India, I think one of the biggest things people grapple with is the fact that they don't have an IIT or IIM label.
Right.
I mean, there's so much. Each of us grapples with our own sort of thing. And then, at some point you realize, and hopefully everyone does, I did it a little late, that, everyone has one of these sort of baggages, handicaps, challenges, usually more than one. And the more you kind of accept it, the more the world makes it a positive thing. So it's like, you can't laugh at the funny guy in the group or the comedian because he's already making fun of himself in
Right.
some way. And I think weakness is a little bit of the same, right? So if you're accepting it and you're saying, hey, this is me, then so I find it really ironic that people introduce me as Edelweiss CEO, MD and CEO and girl with a broken neck. I'm like, really? Okay, that became a title. So I haven't changed. How I look hasn't changed. But I think people's perception changes when you change. I think there's a saying in Hindi कि आप नजर बदलोगे तो नज़ारे बदल जाएंगे और आप सोच बदलोगे तो सितारे बदल जाएंगे. I think that is true for most people in life, and it is in that sense an interesting journey of developing self-confidence.
Yeah. And that's something we find is really so lacking, especially in women and even accomplished women. I'm not even talking about women without education or financial independence. Accomplished women are so lacking in that self confidence, that cultural conditioning. It still exists, isn't it? They'll always be the last person to speak up if there's a meeting. They'll always be the last person to get a seat at the table first. There's so many things that are not in their favor, and yet even if they are, they find it difficult to. There's that imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, and I mean I'll tell you a story about imposter syndrome, but I totally agree, and I think some of it is social conditioning, right? I mean I remember
Yeah.
getting married, and I had a reasonably light lehenga because I lived in the US and I was getting married in India, and I was walking fast, and my husband walked super fast, and the pandit actually told me, "Should slow down, dulhan ko sharmana chahiye." Now, you're conditioned. So, and this is it's pretty standard, right? उनको शर्माना चाहिए, right? लड़की को शर्माना चाहिए, सहमा रहना चाहिए, नाज होना, all that stuff. So, I think you're culturally conditioned to that, and it shows up in the workplace actually much more than it shows up in the US because you don't raise your hand and ask for opportunities. You put yourself down, and typically I've seen in offices if a man is 8 in skill, he'll rate himself 12 and he'll attribute it all to his own success. And if a woman is 9, she'll rate herself 7 and give everyone else credit for her
Right.
own success. And I've heard so many women being a victim of this imposter syndrome. And by the way, it happens to me, most of the times when I win some award, including yesterday, there's some sense of guilt or imposter syndrome. So I remember last year, it was really funny. I won LinkedIn's top voices in India, which is nice. And then they told me I was top voices all over the world in finance and economy. And the
Wow.
only other Indian in that list was Raghuram Rajan. And I
Wow.
was I write, LinkedIn posts about like my life and emotional stuff, and he's like Raghuram Rajan, right? And then I think a week after or something, I don't know, before, Fortune rated me in one of these top 40 or top 50 lists, and I was like one rank behind Priyanka Chopra. I mean, I was
Wow.
fully convinced between Raghuram Rajan and Priyanka Chopra that I was an imposter.
Huh.
You're almost embarrassed to, and I think you have to own your success. So my mother keeps telling me this. I think you have to own your success because no one's given it to you for free.
Right. And you worked for it. And you worked very, very hard for it. You've gone to the best universities, not by accident, but because
Yeah.
you worked to get in. There was no one who gave you easy admission.
No.
You worked in the best organizations. Again, McKinsey is one of the most fiercely competitive organizations in the world. So, what were the things that kept you going all the time, Radhika? Apart from that innate self confidence, what else was it? Did you keep honing yourself, adding to your skills?
So I think self-confidence, by the way, was not there in my 20s. I think that came out of my entrepreneurial stint.
Okay,
That really helped. Because when you're working in a large organization, whether it's Microsoft or McKinsey, etc., you're very shielded and you don't need to really look at the external world because there's such a big brand backing you. And if
right,
you just do your job well, you're going to do fine. But when you go out and you leave that thing on your business card behind you, Kaveri, and you're suddenly the peon and you're suddenly fighting with the regulator to get a license and you're fighting with income tax to get a PAN card and you're going and opening the bank account and you have to find clients, then you realize, listen, if I look weak, how can I get anything out of anyone else? So then I think entrepreneurship gives you that dose of self-confidence. I'm a big believer in constantly getting better. And the unfortunate thing is that an academic environment really pushes you to do that till you're 21 or 23 if you've done a master's. But
yeah,
after that, you have to kind of push yourself, and you can't do everything. So I always say that you should sort of bucket your life into a few different things that you're good at,
yeah,
things that you're less good at, and things that you don't have so much experience at. So you're not good at them, but you don't have experience. So if you tried them and if you worked at them, maybe you'd get better. Like a lot of people say they struggle to manage people. Well, they haven't managed people. So how do they know if they'll struggle? So they need an opportunity. So I always think that sort of bucket yourself and your skills into these three things and
right,
keep asking for ways to get better at the third set. So,
right,
I had a phase where, I needed to learn how to manage people. So you have to ask for that project.
right. And oftentimes we don't do that. We have that hesitation. How can you ask for work, or how can you ask for a job? How can you ask for help? We have that. I think it's also a middle class thing. That asking for something is, it's something that,
वही चीज है.
ha,
कोई मना कर देगा तो क्या होगा?
ha, it's
ये
like,
हो जाएगा.
which is so strange, because why can't you ask for help? But talk a little about that, Radhika, because that hesitation, and I think it comes from our middle class upbringing as well. Doesn't that come in the way?
So it's really funny, Kaveri, and I know you do a lot of work with film industry. I'm a film buff, so occasionally I watch some of these film interviews, and I've seen anchors asking actresses, would you be confident? I think someone was asking Kareena Kapoor, would you be confident enough to ask for a role? As if her asking was like a really bad thing, and she's like, maybe in a 10-year ago time I wouldn't, but today I would and I should, and I absolutely think you should, because the fact is, there is talk of sponsors and mentors and bosses, etc., spouses, parents. People are nice people, but ultimately, whose responsibility is your success in your career? It is ultimately yours, right? It is each man or each woman for himself. And I think we have to have a little less ego about rejection and people saying no to you. I mean, I sometimes and till now ask for things that are maybe above my pay grade, or beyond my reach. And sometimes I get rejected and I feel bad. But, once in a while you get it and then it's life changing. So I think we have to be a
Right.
little less emotional about people saying no to us. Okay, we didn't get an opportunity. We'll stand up and try again. But if you
Yeah.
don't, nobody is going to sit here and say, oh, Kaveri is such a nice person. She's so competent. Maybe she should do that opportunity that she doesn't have experience in. I don't know if she wants it. Oh, Kaveri is such a nice person. I have to go out and do something for Kaveri. Nobody does that.
No one will do that.
Nobody should do that.
Exactly. Why should they? Unless you speak up, the world is not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
But I think that's again something, and I don't think it's even a woman or man thing. I think it's a middle class thing, you know? Do you think that?
I do, and I gave you your film industry example. It is a thing कि पूछेंगे तो कोई मना कर देगा तो ईगो पे जाएगा,
हाँ,
क्या चेहरा रह
क्या
जाएगा
हो जाए?
हमारा? ये हमने घरों में सुना है. We've heard these things in our house. That what face will I have if someone says
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
Well, you know what? In any case, he was going to say no. So then also you didn't have a face. So I'm saying, and asking, you don't ask irrationally, and you don't want to be the complainer. Look, even in offices, I say you don't want to be the one who's always saying, "Oh, I need a pay hike. I need a pay hike." You can't tell your boss that every day. That's stupid. You have to be smart. But when you
Yeah.
have worked, say you have this goal in sight, and you think, okay, I have to do so much work to achieve this goal. You've done the work, you've trained, you've improved your skills, you've done all that. Then, if there's an opportunity out there and you don't go ask for it, you're really foolish because you're not closing the loop. So, you have to ask
Right.
for the right things at the right time in the right quantum. I mean, I want to, sort of add that to this. So, you have to have a slightly practical viewpoint, but if you deserve it, you have a right to ask for it for sure.
Right.
And Indians don't ask, and Indian women definitely don't ask.
Don't ask. I mean, it's absolutely something that they're not supposed to do. But Radhika, also let's talk a little about being CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management at a time when people are in such financial distress. When you look around and you see some of the financial distress around you, middle class families, just struggling with their savings, people losing jobs. What is the kind of advice you'd like to give, especially women? Because I think they really, know how to manage money, but they need to step up, I think.
But they know how to manage money. They were born to manage money. Our mothers and grandmothers used to manage
That's
houses,
what
right?
they did.
And they did it with very little resources, and they kept all these different people happy. And they didn't have to do press releases and have cost budgeting meetings and MIS and all these tools. So I think we learned it at home. I think the advice to women, and Kaveri, I mean, times are already very tough. I don't mean to sound gloomy, but the minimum you can do at this time is be financially aware. Life is, I mean, the one thing that the year has taught you is that life is so uncertain. You
Yeah.
have to know where the finances of the house are. And this is not such a difficult skill, right? Today, and there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of resources to learn about investing. And there's a lot of financial advisory help. I mean, this is one thing my brand and Edelweiss have been saying a lot. Advisor Rudy, there are great financial advisors out there. Go work with someone. Just like, you can do your taxes if you're stuck because there's a CA out there. You can do a medical problem if you're stuck, right? Because there are doctors out there, there are financial advisors out there, there are people out there. So please be financially informed, and it is not that tough. And I also want to clear another myth to women. Good investing doesn't mean sitting on a Bloomberg screen all day and being really macho and alpha male and talking stocks all day. It's just about the basics of saving money, which we are naturally good at, having some goals which we can define for the family, and putting money into different buckets based on those goals. I mean, it's that simple. And then just sticking to that. And women tend to be very good long term investors, by the way. So it's not that difficult. Of all the things you do in your life, this is not one of the most difficult.
Right. But still, you get women who doubt themselves.
All the time. You get all categories. You get women who say, this is too difficult for me to do. I don't understand finance. You get more and more who are actually just lazy, who are saying, why do I need to do this? I'll just
Right.
outsource this to my husband or father, etc. I'll take something else. Why do I do
Right.
this? It's a man's
Right.
job. So you get both mixes of and you get the third who want to do it, and their spouses sometimes, unfortunately, don't want to involve them in the process. So that is a, and that is something that you should demand. Honestly, that is something that you
Right,
should demand in a happy marriage, because ultimately finance is, you're not making money to keep in a bank account. You're making it to improve your life, and life is lived together, right? So you get all three,
right,
for sure.
right. Radhika, let's also talk about entrepreneurship at this time because things are so bleak in terms of job prospects. What is your advice to women at this time?
So I think a few things. One is, and I'm telling you this and I'm talking to myself here. It is a very bleak time, Kaveri. You are on social. It's a very easy time to feel low. Don't suck
Yes,
yourself into a cycle of lowness. It happens to me, once every few days where, you'll hear about some family member or friend or
right.
someone that, don't
It's
suck
so
yourself into.
easy to slip into depression, Radhika, isn't it?
You can, and I don't, and I am a very happy, optimistic, energetic person. But I understand that. Um, but I'm saying, if you're fortunate enough to go through this time with, hopefully, your family, etc., not being affected, then use this time to be productive. We say in life a lot, "हमें time नहीं है, हमारे पास time नहीं है, we don't have time." But you know what? We finally have time to do things.
Mm.
If you have a job, my advice to you would be to give the very best to your job. People keep worrying about unemployment, etc. I think good employees have a market. So if you have a job, think about how you can do more and more in your job in this given
Right,
time. If you don't, and if you're looking, and I do understand that the job market is very difficult, one, don't give up looking. Two,
mm,
keep owning your other skills. And there's so much learning digitally.
mm,
And three, entrepreneurship is a great experiment. I mean, one of the things that this second wave has convinced me is that young people can go and do so much, if they put their
mm.
heart into it. And honestly, the country needs them to do that. So I think at least these three things, please do keep in mind. But the most important thing is, don't fall into this vortex of depression, debates about politics. I mean, control what you can control. Gauragopal Das once told me that if you remember basic math, any equation is a combination of things that are constant and things that are variable.
Right.
You can't change the constants. You can't change COVID second wave, unless you're in the medical fraternity or politician. You can't, right? But focus on the variables in life.
Mm,
Focus on what you can control. And young people have a lot of energy. So how can you channelize that energy to do something better?
right. What are the things that you would advise young people to look at? What are the kinds of careers that are emerging from this? And careers are emerging. You have kinds of things emerging from the second wave. What would you advise young people to do?
Oh God, there's so many kind of careers emerging. I think the whole digital space is
Right,
exploding. So if you're looking at to do something in data, if you're looking to do something in digital marketing, if you're looking to do something in content creation for young people, I mean, just three easy spaces that are emerging.
right,
A lot of industries need work, whether it's supply chain, whether it's logistics. So I could give you a laundry list of careers. Financial advisory continues to be a very, very exciting
right.
career.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of careers are emerging, and young people have a digital savviness, and a lot of the delivery in these careers, whether it's financial advisory or data, even mental health counseling, a lot of the delivery will be digital. So I think young people can bring that to the table.
right, right. And how do you see your role, Radhika, emerging in all this? How is that evolved?
So there is a professional role, and I think there are things that I do as an individual. I think professionally, I continue to be very excited about what I do. I essentially try to make more Indians safe, and that gamut of opportunity is huge. I think the one thing people need is tremendous financial security, and ultimately, we're in the business of mutual funds that gives you options to invest. So just expanding the reach of what I do, and the great thing about a country like India is that opportunity is limitless, right?
Right.
In India, if you look at the penetration of mutual funds to GDP, it's about 7 or 10%. Globally, it's
That's
40%. Yeah, it's tiny.
okay.
It's less
Right,
than 10%. It's 40% globally. So there
right,
is so much to do in this space. And the exciting thing post-COVID, Kaveri, is that the delivery is all digital.
Right.
50% of our transactions used to be physical before, and we used to worry that we are not present in so many locations, we don't have branches. Now every mobile phone is a branch, right? So you have so much that you can do digitally, even being a younger brand, and you can engage customers digitally, right? I used to travel 2, 3 days a week. Now all the engagement is digital. We're
Right.
running. Like we're doing an open house later today. After this, we have thousands of people signing up to talk to the fund managers, retail investors talking to fund managers directly over a digital platform. So I think that's really exciting. So professionally, I think that's the road ahead, and it continues to be exciting. I think personally, this lockdown has given me a chance to do a lot more writing, a lot more content creation, a little bit more activity on social media. So I'm always wondering how can I raise my voice in a positive way to hopefully uplift, educate, and if possible, inspire people. So I think that's the constant effort. I think ultimately success is about impact and legacy, and that's what I want to keep working towards.
Right. Radhika, let's talk about something that's, of course, related, women in leadership positions. And, training ourselves to become leaders. And this is, I think, a time, there's no time like now to start. I think the world has seen that whatever we've been doing till now hasn't clearly worked. So why not try an alternative path? And women can show the way there. What are the things that women specifically need to work on to become leaders in society?
So I think women need to become, bring their natural selves to the workplace. I think for too long we've been told, oh, crying at work is a problem, being empathetic is a problem, etc., is a
Right.
problem. I just think we need to bring our natural selves to the workplace. Again, and I always go back to the example of a mother. The mother who was a natural leader of the household because she treated each of her three son, daughter, and in-law or husband differently. The mother who was obsessed about how the experience of eating dinner was, without any press release. I think we need to bring that. I think if you look at this world, and people quote so many. I mean, one of the lasting memories of COVID, Kaveri, will be the fact that countries who handled COVID well were run by women. Uh,
Exactly.
whether it's Germany or whether it's New Zealand or whether it's Finland. So someone must be doing something right. I mean, I look at someone like Jacinda Ardern and, okay, give me the thing that, oh, New Zealand is a small country, etc. There are lots of small countries that haven't been run well. Jacinda is doing a fabulous job and she's such a real leader. So she's going out there in a sweatshirt and managing her baby and doing a conversation with people around her. She's a people's person. She's a leader who's not sitting in a glass office, which I think is completely obsolete. She's there for the team. She's fighting for her team. She's fighting for her people. And I think that's what leadership is. It's honest and it's authentic. And it's not glass cabin. It's not distant from the team. It's with the team.
Right. That's so well put, Radhika. Radhika, just going back a little to your own life, when you moved from the US to India, I'm very intrigued by that because, sometimes do you sit back and think, what if I had continued to live in the US and, you were an entrepreneur doing very well? What motivated you?
So it's hard to say what motivated because I think young blood is hungry and foolish at some level. Right? You're 24, you constantly want to keep getting better. And I was like, I just want to come to India and start a business. Maybe because all my friends ran businesses. I mean, you just don't know. So I don't want to say, oh, there was some great strategy and decision. I think the thinking was, ye nahi chala, to we'll go back and do an MBA. I think that was the plan B. I think one thing is interesting though, when I left the US, obviously it wasn't a popular decision because I was working, I was earning a lot of money on Wall Street. I had just survived 2008. So was my husband. He was my partner in the business we launched here. And every middle class Indian's kind of thing.
Dream.
She got into Wharton. She did all this. She's earning a big dollar salary. So I remember for years after I came back, my mom would ask, "यार अगर तू US में रहती तो तेरी salary क्या होती?" Uh, but one of the things of foreign service background, and I have learned this from my father, is you always have to move forward. We hold on to the past too much, and if you hold on to the past, you don't move on. So after I moved to India, I actually never visited the US for 10 years. Just I didn't want
Right?
to. Yeah, I didn't. I visited 2 years ago. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to look back at my former jobs. And I don't know if that's the healthiest approach, but that's the way I sort of handle it. I just didn't look back. I never asked if I was living there to मेरी salary कितनी होती. If I was living there तो मेरा घर कैसा होता. My father always says this when he changed countries कि पुराना स्कूल, पुराने दोस्त वो सब छोड़ो, नया दौर आने वाला है, नए दौर की तरफ देखो.
Right.
And so this naya dot thing is very in my head. And so dad has always taught us to move forward.
Hmm. It's so interesting. Ultimately, it comes down to the lessons our parents taught us unknowingly. I
Yeah.
mean, these were probably dinner table conversations and how they remain stuck in your head, right?
Yeah, and it's not, sometimes it was not even a conversation. It was just seeing how he behaved.
Yeah,
With him, it was just when we moved country to country, we would complain, but he never had that sense of sadness or loss. He always had this sense of positivity ahead of him, and
right,
that's what we grew up. For him, if he lived in Nigeria or Pakistan or New York, where he lived today was the best.
right.
And that was his sort of, that has been his, he's retired now and he has never been happier. So I think, it's the subconscious things that they do.
Right.
I perhaps think most of us don't give enough credit to our parents for what they are.
Yeah, I think, but as we grow older and maybe become parents ourselves, then we realize and what our parents told us that when you become a parent, you will realize. But even if you're not a parent, the older you get, you realize, what they taught you.
Yeah.
Radhika, I also wanted to ask you about when we talk about the role of women in Indian society, there are two things that come to mind. One is, of course, the role of men, and of course, for the longest time, it's a running joke that the men haven't really progressed as much as the women. But the other is actually the family unit. And I wonder when you look around, do you see a change in the family unit? Do you see that it's responding to the kind of crises that the world is throwing at it?
It's a very mixed bag, and I have been very fortunate. And I'll give you some examples. I married into a Catholic family. My husband is Goan Mangalorean.
Wow.
And on my last birthday, my parents actually thanked my in-laws in this, and we are from UP.
Huh.
Before I get trolled for any of this, they just thanked my in-laws because they felt their daughter had married into such a progressive family.
Wow.
So I come from a world where nobody is forced to change their last name. The daughter-in-law is not asked, when are you going to have kids? I mean, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law and family celebrate my professional success as much as my parents do. I've seen my own father and mother, and they come from a traditional UP Bania family, evolved so much. Now, my father is the one who tells people कि बेटी पैदा हो ना घर में तो मिठाई का डब्बा बांटना कंसर्न. वो गाँव में जाके या यूपी में घरों में भाइयों को कहते हैं कि बेटी पैदा हुई है ना तब मुझे जाके मिठाई देना.
Right.
So that change has come, and I think success sometimes has the ability to change mindsets. I see even my cousins in Saharanpur, all the girls are sort of working, well educated, and the parents want them from that. I've got colleagues at work whose mother in laws are so incredibly supportive, so
Hmm.
incredibly supportive. So there's real pockets of hope. Of course, there are people not as privileged, and there are a traditional set of mindsets, but across all communities, there are also pockets of hope. And I really believe that if the woman is putting her best into the workplace and giving it all she's got, the society around her will change.
Hmm. Right. And you feel that it will become supportive. But do you see that change happening now? Is it growing, or do you see that it's not as much as it should be?
No, I think it's growing, Kaveri. I think it is definitely growing. I think the empathy in workplaces is growing, and I think women's success. I have, multiple women in my team who I'm sure earn much more than their husbands, and I think they're breeding a generation of more progressive mother-in-laws.
Hmm. Hmm. And sons, hopefully.
Sons, mother-in-laws, and the whole community. So, as I said, when you see a woman go out there, when the woman herself is semi-committed to work and she makes excuses, then how can you expect the ecosystem to change?
Right.
I think if you are doing really well and your in-laws realize that this is happening, I'm telling you they'll change. So I remember getting into Wharton and another school that was not as good, and Wharton was giving me less scholarship compared to the other one. And we are not very financially well off. My dad was in government. You don't get a lot of cash income. And I told my dad I can go to the other college and my US to January is not such a big deal. And he said, if you've got into the best, you're going to go to the best.
Wow. So that
Um,
kind of commitment has to come from your family as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And I mean, I remember when my brother was getting married and he had a love marriage, they said the one criteria we have is you marry a working, ambitious girl.
right. Lovely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's, I think, too often we hear complaints about the middle class. I was speaking to a very well known sociologist the other day, and he was telling me he felt very disappointed in the middle class, especially in the last lockdown. If you read Harsh Mandar, it makes your heart weep at the kind of lack of empathy that was shown. And I think, as Arundhati Roy said there, that the virus was also an X-ray of how we were as a society, and often the middle class has been said to have sort of seceded in a way from India. Their aspirations are sort of global. Their inspirations are global, and they have only one foot in India and sort of semi-commitment to India. And really, a country cannot grow if its middle class cannot grow. And I think Joe Biden said it recently as the day before. Do you feel that, or do you feel that the middle class is seceded, or do you feel that the middle class is still very strongly rooted to the idea of India?
I think they are honestly. I'm a big India bull, and I know we're going through a real hell,
Very
but
bad time.
yeah, I still have hope in the goodness of people. I mean, take one example. At a time when a lot of people in the system may or may not be helping, there are common people on social media trying to help each other out. And so I think if you push, and there is a set of people who are going out without masks and doing things, but there is a big set of people who's just going out and helping people out selflessly. It is absolutely incredible. So I think the pandemic has brought out extremes in people. So while it brings out some of the bad side of people, it also brings out the innate human goodness in people. I mean, the fact that people are setting up oxygen lungers, putting queries on Twitter, calling them today. I put a query on Twitter for some family member, and someone I hardly know called me and said, "I'm going to make this happen for you." Who does that?
Yeah.
And there are so many stories. So, and in fact, in the last week, more than once I've got emotional and overwhelmed at the goodness of people. Now, perhaps I chose to focus on the good side of the world.
Yeah.
There's so many young entrepreneurs and so many startups trying to raise money at this time, do what they can at this time. So, I think it depends on whether you look at the glass half full or glass half empty.
Right. Yeah, and you need hope in times like this, and you have to create and generate that hope as well. Radhika, what really is the future of the financial side of things that we're looking at in India currently? We see that the lockdown may continue. We see, a loss of job. We see a lot of pain. What makes you an India bull? What makes you convinced that there is light at the end of the tunnel?
I think the size of the opportunity makes you a bull. Makes me a bull. I gave you my example of 10% or 40%. I think India is fundamentally a country where you can experience growth. I think in the US, if you talk about growth, it's like 2% growth and
Yeah,
5%
yeah,
growth. I think India is a country of scorching growth. So I think that's one. And I think the spirit of Indian entrepreneurship and young India's desire to just do things, I think makes me a bull. And it doesn't matter what government we have in power. I think young people want to go out there and do things. And so I think that the size of the opportunity, one, and the fundamental entrepreneurial spirit that drives people to say, yeah, I want to do something. कुछ कीड़ा है मेरे में, मुझे कुछ करना है.
right.
I think that spirit still makes me very optimistic. And I hope my optimism isn't unfounded.
Yeah, but it's so good to hear. And I tell you, Radhika, at this time when there's so much doom and gloom, we need to listen to some reasonable optimism as well. Not optimism that is just, a random, rhetoric, but optimism that is rooted in reality.
Yeah.
So you do feel that we have a fundamentally entrepreneurial streak in us, you think? which
I
has sort of not been given the kind of opportunities it ought to have.
And it's in small businesses and it's in villages and it's in the unicorns that we produce. It's in the whole range. It's not just the big companies and the big tech. It's everything from the entrepreneurship that exists in the heartland to the entrepreneurship that exists in the billion-plus-dollar companies that come out of India. And I work in the capital markets, right? So I get to see some of these companies coming to the market and then hopefully making wealth for people as well.
What are the 2 or 3 careers that you would like people to develop businesses in,
Oh, this is
or
hard.
you feel that they can?
So I hope India sees more manufacturing businesses, and I hope India sees more businesses that focus on logistics and supply chain. I think those are two things. We already do a very, very good job in terms of services.
Right, right. But services has perhaps been the hardest hit during this time, isn't it? Whether it's retail or hospitality,
The service
how
guy.
do they hope to recover?
Traditional services like retail and hospitality have been very hard hit. Digital services have, on the other hand, seen a complete boom. So it's not that people aren't consuming, right? I mean, one of the best things in lockdown is the fact that e-commerce exists, and I think some of the homegrown Indian e-commerce companies, by the way, are doing a brilliant job servicing consumers, and I just brilliant job.
Right. Are there ones that you'd like to mention?
Oh, I mean, so many of them. I mean, I think the guys at Flipkart, the guys at Snapdeal, the guys at Myntra, all of you guys are doing a great job. I ordered something from one of these companies before the Bombay lockdown. It was a non-essential item, and they couldn't deliver it in the lockdown. They send me an update every day saying, "Oh, sorry, we can't do this," etc., etc., etc. And then, as things have gotten better in Bombay, stuff just came. I never had to follow up. It's
Hmm.
incredible. I think the level of service is incredible. I mean, Zomato is doing a fantastic job. I know it's coming up for a listing. I think the guys at Zomato are doing an outstanding job. So, and there will be niggles and there will be unhappy customers, but some of these guys are doing a very, very good job. ATM guys are doing a wonderful
Oh,
job.
yeah, they are.
So, a lot of these guys are doing a very, very good job.
Radhika Gupta, always such a pleasure and so inspiring to listen to you. I really do hope that more women follow your example, follow their hearts and minds, and do what seems the best for them, and speak up
Raise
and
your voice.
stand up for themselves.
You have a voice for a reason. Use it.
Exactly. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much,
Kaveri.
Radhika Gupta. Gupta. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaveri.